Well, good evening. Just getting some things together here this evening, and just wanted to spend a few minutes today um, trying something here going live, and just to remember my mom, Wilma Jean Gangi. And just had a lot of thoughts over the past few years, and typically I've talked a little bit to my dad and my brother and Connie and the kids, and but it's just been something that I haven't really talked about to any group of people. But just wanted to take a few minutes today on the 30th anniversary of Mom's passing, and so I'm just gonna have a conversation and hopefully just remember Mom. And so, if anybody that is watching wants to make a comment, or maybe even later on join in and share, that would be great. I'd love that. So anyway, just do a quick check and see if everybody look if everybody is able to see and hear. Wayne is here sending me messages, so I'm just going to try to be relaxed and share a few things. So anyway, if you're watching, just drop a note in the comment of the video so I know you're here. And I just have a couple things prepared here that I'm going to go through and I want to talk about. I'm going to make one change here so that my my video looks good. All right. Hey, Beth. Hi, Beth Ann. All right. Well, just had some thoughts about Mom, and I wanted to share. First of all, I'm going to try doing a screen share here and just pop up a couple pictures. Hey, Aunt Joan. Hey, Aunt Judy. Good to see you guys. And I just wanted to share a couple pictures. I'm going to try to do this, see if my computer will cooperate with me. Yeah, I know I work on computers, but I have problems sometimes too. So let's see if I can share my screen real quick here. Facebook didn't move everything around on me. Well, I'll figure that out here in a minute. But just wanted to talk about a few things, memories that I have of 1993. A couple things about our family is one of the highlights for us was that on our vacation every year we would go camping, and Mom and Dad just made spending time together a priority, and always looked forward to it as a kid. And so we would go camping every summer, and we were pretty hardcore sometimes. We would go out in the tent, and we would cook over an open fire, and we would sit up. Sometimes it would rain, and we would sit under a tarp canopy, and we would go and do some hiking and various things like that. But we had a lot of great memories, and we always had a campfire. And Dad, of course, utilized all his Boy Scout training, and we would always have a campfire, and we would sit around and we would cook meals over the campfire, and we would go fishing and hiking and things like that. And so the summer of 1993 was no exception. We had planned to go to a campground that we loved to camp at in central Ohio. And we went there, and if I'm getting my facts right, the campground, we'd made a reservation, but it was closed. So Mom and Dad had to do some real quick searching, and they located another campground nearby. And it turned out to just be an incredible place for us to go. And we loved it. We went there. We had it all to ourselves. We set up our tent next to a pond. And I did some fishing, and Wayne did as well. And we I think I had just turned 14 that summer, and so anyway, we did some fishing there, and I remember Mom did something unusual. She usually didn't get involved in the fishing, but as long as I would put the bait on her hook, she sat on the bank and did some fishing. I don't know that we caught much, but it got to be where Wayne and I were having so much fun just catching little bluegill, and we would put bread on a hook and they would bite it. And so I remember, I think we have a picture somewhere of us standing there with Mom. And of course, she tried to avoid pictures a lot, and so it was hard to find pictures. And of her, we have had to search far and wide. So if any of you have pictures, I've thought about maybe posting a link sometime soon on my page and offer a place for people to upload pictures. So anyway, that aside, but I have great memories of us being there and fishing and camping out. In the morning, we would get up and the lake had steam rising off of it, and I think Mom or Dad commented that it looked like a soup bowl, and I'll never forget that. So anyway, we had great times there, and we didn't really have much of a sense of what was to come. We always tried to do so I believe that was in July, if I remember correctly. But between July and the end of August and beginning of September, Mom started to have pain. And we went camping on the Labor Day weekend, and the pain had gotten worse. And so I believe they had made appointments, Mom and Dad had, and they started to get concerned. So one night we were there at that camp out, and Mom started to have pain. In fact, she had to go sit in the car that night, and so we immediately knew there was something wrong. She went to the doctor, and they ordered a biopsy, and that kind of began our journey with Mom's cancer, and that was September the 15th of 1993 when we got the results back from that scan. And so then as time went on, Mom had several problems, and toward the end of September, Mom and Dad there were more tests, and Mom and Dad had a meeting with the oncologist, and he told Mom and Dad that it would be fatal and it would not be very long. He didn't give too much time, a sense of time, but we knew that it was going to be fatal. And so soon after, Mom had some problems with blood clots and things, and she had to go into Mercy Hospital in Canton. And one thing that I remember very clearly was that our family stepped up, and we had help from all quarters, both Mom and Dad's families and also from our church family, and people were there to help. Grandma and Grandpa came, Grandma and Grandpa Gangi came, and I believe brought their camper, and I remember them ferrying us around from place to place, taking Wayne and I to school. And there was a lot going on. My memory's a little sketchy through some of it. There was so much happening. But during that time that she was in the hospital up in Canton, I remember going there after school and riding there with Grandma and Grandpa Gangi. And so anyway, those are some memories I have of that. She was able to be discharged from the hospital in Canton. She came home, and we lived, of course, outside of Alliance. It was really Mom's dream home. We had lived in town in Salem, and we had been very happy there. But Mom and Dad wanted to get a place that was a little closer to work and church, and also that was more of what Mom wanted. Mom had a green thumb. She loved being out in the country. Dad did as well, and so they located a place, and it was rough. It needed a lot of work. And so we ended up putting some time. Mom and Dad took a risk, and they put time and money into this place, even before all the paperwork was done. And maybe it wasn't the smartest thing to do, but it worked out in the end. And I'm sure that God was protecting us and had His hand on it. But it was really what Mom would term as her dream house. And she had when we moved there, it was like a jungle. And Mom and Dad started cutting. Dad started trimming trees and cutting down brush, and Mom started unearthing what we found out to be an incredible garden. And the man that had lived there, and we purchased it from his estate, was an organic gardener. He even had a hybrid rose named after him. And Mom started with glee the hard work of digging into what looked like a weed patch. But as she went, we kept unearthing roses. And I remember her squealing with delight as she would find another plant buried under buried underneath all the weeds. And so anyway, she worked and worked, and Dad would take his Saturdays and some evenings, and we would trim trees, and we unearthed basically a beautiful orchard, grapevines, all those kind of things. So it was a great place, a lot to mow. At the time, we had a push mower, and so that was my job to push mow a lot of the jungle. But it really turned into something nice. We moved there in I'm not as good at dates as my dad is, but we moved there in I believe it was the summer of 1990, and so by 1992, 1993, we'd put a lot of time in, and things were really starting to shape up. But I remember Mom having the garden and putting a lot of time in there, and just doing some incredible work. And she just was so happy to find all these roses and all this greenery and things. And so that was kind of how things went. So that summer and into that fall, I remember being there, and I remember a few times Mom and Dad and I and Wayne sitting out on a swing that we had purchased, and just kind of enjoying the fall, but yet there was kind of a shadow hanging over us. So as Mom's condition worsened, they were able to get a hospital bed and bring it into the house. And throughout October and into November, Mom was home, but it was just a difficult time. Things fly by, and as I was a 14-year-old boy, and so there was just a lot to take in. I remember one event very clearly, and that was that we had a family get-together, and a lot of Mom's family came in around Thanksgiving. And of course, I don't believe Mom would have been able to go to Pennsylvania, but the family came in, and we had a great time there with everybody getting together at our home. And we actually, going back, I believe the summer before, we'd had a camp out where everybody came in and brought tents, and we had our whole property was covered with tents. We had a tent city, and we had a great time. And so the family kind of did something similar. Of course, it was colder weather. So I don't know where everybody stayed, but I know they all showed up for a time of getting together. But it was kind of a somber mode, and I was planning to go hunting in Pennsylvania. And so I do believe, if my memory serves, I did go hunting, and so the family, my uncles and cousins, and we had a good time. But yet there was kind of that shadow. So anyway. It came into December, and there was I guess that she had to go back into the hospital for another week in mid-November. I don't remember that very well, but she went in there, and then she was back home for another short time. But on December the 13th, the situation had degraded. Mom's doctor came to our house. She had several friends. I'll just mention Krista Henning. Emily Trevino was another one from our church, and other people from our church who came, people from our school. They came and helped out with meals. They came out and helped out with ferrying us around. I couldn't drive yet. I did have a moped, and I would go around on that, but we needed transportation help and things like that. Dad, of course, was working. His work gave him some time off, but he was trying to balance that. And things were happening so quickly that I don't even think we realized how quick things were going. So it's just a lot to take in. But anyway, on December the 13th, it was an evening. I came home from school, and the doctor came over. Mom's friend Krista and a few other ladies were there, and we knew that she had to go to the hospital, and that likely she wouldn't be returning back to the house. I remember that very clearly. And I remember the doctor meeting with Dad, and then I believe she talked with us, and it was amazing. This doctor came and was at our house for several hours, and then they ordered the ambulance, and the ambulance came to transport Mom to the hospital. And we just stopped in the kitchen, and I remember, you know, being aware that this was probably the last time Mom would be there at the home, and we just prayed together, and it was a difficult time, and I'll never forget that. So that was December the 13th. Right before, as she was there, as we were waiting for the ambulance to come, we had Christmas gifts, and we gave those to Mom, and we prayed together, and she went to the hospital. So that was December the 13th. And again, I don't remember all the events, but I know that my Aunt Geraldine, Grandma and Grandpa Gangi came. They were staying there and going back and forth. And everybody was just amazing, taking care of our needs. And through the next few days, Mom was in the hospital. Family was coming and visiting. And so we were kind of walking through, the valley of the shadow of death. And I remember there came a time where they moved Mom. They knew that she was in the late stages, and we were trying to keep her there in the hospital. And so they moved her over into the pediatric wing of the hospital. And it was very quiet there. There was hardly anyone in the Alliance Hospital at that time in the pediatrics ward. So we were kind of alone. And Wayne and I were still going to school through the end of the school year and of the semester. And so we ended up there in the pediatric ward, and we were still able to talk. We were still able to communicate with Mom, but she was on pain meds, and they kept upping that, and so she had less of chance to be able to talk. She slept a lot, and but I remember just we had people who came, and some there's not much you can say at those times, but people came and they just sat there and they stayed there with us. I remember one old gentleman, he was a pastor, his name was Reverend Harry Strait, and he came and he would just sit there and he would just pray with us. He would just be there. The time our friend, Pastor Lonnie Trevino would come, and again, not much to say, but just he was there. And I had some friends that came. My good friend Benji Summers would come. I remember various aunts and uncles visiting. And of course, Grandma and Grandpa Gangi were there. And that as things wound down and conditions worsened, Dad had to make some. It was the week before she passed away, and Dad had to go and make funeral arrangements and various things like that. Mom had a request; she wanted to be buried in a cemetery up the road from our home. A beautiful little place. It's still a beautiful little place, and so those arrangements were made, and so as memory serves, I remember quite well the 19th of December. We were gathered there in the room. It was a Sunday evening. And again, several friends were there, and it came down to the time for Wayne and I to head home, and my Aunt Geraldine was there, and I was. The doctors had basically said they didn't believe that she would make it through the night, and so I remember just being there with her, sitting down beside the bed, taking her hand in mine, and Dad prayed, and we prayed together as a family. And I knew that probably would see her alive again. But I am thankful that I had hope. Mom was a believer, and Mom had her faith in Jesus. And thankful as a believer to have the hope of eternity and the chance to see her again. So she could barely communicate at the time, but I remember holding her hand and leaning over to her and saying, "Mom, I love you, and good night." And with great effort, she was able to say, "Love you." And I'll never forget that. And I treasure that memory. And we headed home. Dad stayed. There were several people that stayed there with him to the end. And Dad read scripture, and he was reading us. He read a song. It's called "Saved by Grace," and it has some amazing words. You should look it up. "Saved by Grace" are the lyrics, and it talks about seeing Jesus face to face. And we went home and went to bed, and a few hours later, me and Geraldine woke us up and let us know that Mom had passed away. And so it was difficult, but it was just sort of a numbness. And I remember going back to bed, and then, of course, the next day, we did not go to school, and we prepared for the funeral arrangements and all those things. And there was a large viewing that happened. I believe it was on Tuesday evening. And then I believe, if I remember correctly, Wednesday was the funeral and the burial. And then I believe that we went to New York, to my Grandma Gangi's home, Grandpa Gangi's house. And I remember just kind of a numbness setting in. But, in the time afterwards, just in the coming days and weeks, just an incredible outpouring of love and blessings from family. And, that's one of the real blessings that I believe that I have had, that we have had, is to have wonderful friends, wonderful church family, wonderful family that always was there to provide for needs. And I just want to say thank you to those of you that may be watching tonight. Just thank you so much for all of the blessings of having you as part of our family. And your love and investment is appreciated. So that was a few things just to kind of the events coming up to that, and I'm sure I've left things out, but I'd be happy to talk about those, or if you remember things or want to mention them, that's fine. Just wanted to share a few things that I had about grief, and then about Mom. This is the 30th anniversary. It's very hard to believe that it's been 30 years. Yeah, early this morning that she passed away. It was about 2:45 in the morning, December 20th, that she passed away. But grief is one of those things that I have always just tried to lean into and not to avoid. I feel it's like something that, when you lose someone close to you, someone you love, it's not something to fear. It's something to just experience and to be witnessed by others. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to do this tonight, is just to share the things I remember. And 30 years on, there's still pain there. There's still the loss. There's still the what ifs. Obviously. With my family, my children, I'd love to be able to have them meet their grandma, but by God's grace, someday they can. But anyway, so it's interesting. For years, Christmas was a very difficult time for me. It was something that I did not look forward to. But I remember when that changed. And that was in 2006, when Drew was born. And it was his first Christmas. And I'll never forget that Christmas, and it was really neat, and I've enjoyed Christmas every year since. I'm actually sitting here in my living room enjoying my Christmas tree. If I could turn my camera around, I would show it to you. But I really enjoy Christmas, and of course my kids do, my wife does, and so it's something I look forward to every year. But it was difficult for a few years, but I'm thankful for God's blessings and for those things. So, some years hasn't been an issue, but you come around to an anniversary, and all of a sudden, it wasn't like a round number year, but just a year where all of a sudden is hit with grief and struggle. And a few years ago that happened, and this year has been especially difficult. But again, I'm thankful for the hope found in Christ, and I'm thankful for friends and family, and for those things, and for the great memories that I have. Just wanted to share a few things. about Mom. Things I've learned, things I think those of you that know her might remember and could learn. You know, one of the most standout things that I remember about Mom was that Mom practiced sacrificial love. Um, what an incredible example of sacrificial love. Mom was, you know, I look back at my childhood and I was, you know, from 1980. I have some tiny memories of 1980 through the year she died, 1993. I was there every day in and day out, and saw Mom in the good times and the bad times and the up times and the down times, and had quite a ringside seat for her life. And you know, she always was investing in people. First of all, she always put our needs. I remember being an only child back in those wonderful days before Wayne came along and messed everything up. Just kidding, Wayne. I love you. We joke about that. But anyway, she put my needs first as a child. I remember her spending hours reading to me, talking to me, sharing with me, um, and pouring into me, investing in me. She invested in Wayne, in Dad, in time together. We spent time together. I remember those camping trips. We would sit around the campfire for hours in the evening and talk. And Wayne would go to sleep, then I would go to sleep. And I remember one of my favorite memories of camping is just falling asleep in the tent, hearing the murmur of Mom and Dad's voices, laughter, and just talking. And I would go to sleep with that sound in my ears. What an incredible blessing! Times to sit around the campfire and pray together, and just for Mom and Dad to share. But those are wonderful times. But Mom always put our needs first. Sometimes to her own hurt. You know, there was sometimes I think she should have said, "All right, you guys have to wait." But she would always invest. And I don't believe that she resented it. I'm sure there were times where she struggled. Dad worked long hours, and so there were a lot of things she ended up having to do and take care of. Finances were tight. Mom and Dad both worked very hard, but Mom put aside her needs and put others first. She invested in relationships, of course, with Wayne, myself, and Dad, but also with friends. I remember when there was a lady in the area who was having some real problems. She had some relational problems. There was some, I think probably some abuse going on there with her husband. And Mom stepped in and helped. She watched their children. She did some counseling. She did some praying and some encouraging. She volunteered in the church a lot. She invested in people and in people's lives. She prayed. She carried those burdens, and I will never forget that. And what a great example of a way to live a life that's not centered on me, but is centered on others. And she definitely led that incredible example. I'm just going to check in real quick, make sure with my tech advisors to make sure everything looks and sounds good. So the other thing that I thought that was interesting that Mom did was she demonstrated respect. She had respect for others. She respected authority. She never, and you know, these are things that she taught not only through things she said, but the way that she lived. She offered respect to Wayne and I. She did not, in her, in the way that she carried herself and the way she interacted with us, she, again, with, of course, putting our needs first, but she just demonstrated that respect, and that's something that I value. She respected Dad. You know, their relationship wasn't perfect, but she always was respectful of him, even whenever she was frustrated. And again, as a kid, you see these things, and you know, she was frustrated, but yet she demonstrated that respect. I remember we had the orchard, and at times of the year, of course, it would produce a lot of things. And Dad would go out in the morning before work, and he would pick a bunch of things. He'd bring them in for her, and she would groan because she would have to get some things ready. She wanted to do it. She loved to cook things. She loved to prepare. But after the third 5-gallon bucket of pears showed up, she was just done with them. And so anyway, but even in those moments of frustration, or she was exhausted or tired, or she had a lot dumped on her plate, she always was. She didn't act one way to someone's face and then act a different way separately. She was true blue. I remember her getting frustrated with me. I gave her plenty of reason for that. But I remember her also coming and saying I didn't respond well and I'm sorry. Being willing to apologize. It was what a blessing. Those are things that I'll never forget. Something I wanted to mention is Mom was very resourceful. She loved to stretch a dollar, and I don't remember the details, but I remember her rejoicing to Dad about how she'd been able to make the food budget stretch. Mom and Dad made choices in their life. They made choices to invest in their family. Dad made a choice to not. He had an option at his work to work different hours when he had a better job in the mid to late 80s, to maybe double. But he chose to keep his daytime hours so he'd be able to be home in the evenings, and that cost him financially. Dad chose to go to Bible college. He chose to put ministry and some other things first in his life, and so there were some costs to that. They didn't make as much money as maybe they could have, etc. But mom made the dollar stretch, and she didn't complain about it. In fact, it was almost a challenge. And she made shopping. It was like a military operation. She knew where she was going to get, where she was going to get it, and what she was going to do. And she also took on jobs. She took on odd jobs. She did house cleaning. She did babysitting. She did some babysitting and house cleaning. And and God always provided for us. And it's incredible all the stories I could tell you about how God provided for our needs. And there's another one maybe I'll share later on. But Mom made do with very little. I found a box. It was kind of damaged, but I found a box with some Christmas decorations that she'd made. At the time, we probably couldn't afford them, but she crocheted things, she made things, and I never knew the difference. They were beautiful, and she loved Christmas. We would get out the Christmas tree and decorate it, and that was always a highlight, getting the box, the Christmas tree down, and getting the ornaments, and they all had stories, and she would tell them to me as we put them up, and it was meaningful. But anyway, she would. Mom also liked to celebrate. Every year on New Year's, we would see the New Year in, me and her. I don't remember I think Wayne probably did in later years, but especially before he was very old or still pretty small. I remember us taking cardboard, construction paper, and cutting up confetti and going outside and yelling Happy New Year. Dad had to get up sometimes at 4 or 5 in the morning and go to work, and so he would go to sleep. He wouldn't stay up and see the New Year, but Mom and I would do that, and we always had a blast. But a little bit of construction paper and just very simple things would turn into a great celebration. So I remember that, and I remember all the construction paper confetti littering the snowdrifts outside of our back door. When we moved to out of town to the Alliance area, I would shoot off my shotgun into the air. Of course, it had pellets. No one worry. There was no slugs coming down on anyone's head anywhere. But we would celebrate the New Year. Mom would make cakes, and she would make us, Wayne or I or Dad, a cake, and we would celebrate and have our birthday parties and things like that. And things were simple, but they were fun and they were enjoyable. I have great memories from that. Another thing about Mom is she was always teaching. She taught as she walked, was the note that I made. As we did things, she would share. And I learned so many things just from chatting with her and her sharing and relating stories. She told me about things that had happened in the past. She told me about her story. She told me about things from her teenage years, from growing up, from our early family life, things like that. So she was always teaching me that. One thing that Mom did is she prioritized her relationship with God. It was kind of interesting, the arrangement Mom and Dad had worked out. Of course, Dad, for some of the early years, he had to get up very early and go to work. But then Mom was a night owl. She would stay up late, and Dad would go to bed. He would read to Wayne and I, and Mom would stay up. She would finish up some of her things around the house. Then she would sit down in a chair and she would read things. She would read the Bible. She would pray, and she would have her devotions. And I remember coming down sometimes. When you're a kid, you don't really want to go to bed, so you come down to get a drink or get a snack, and I would find her sitting there in her chair with tears in her eyes, reading the scripture and praying. And I remember her carrying a burden for people in our church, carrying a burden for her siblings, carrying a burden for other people in her family. In much the way that she told me about my grandmother carrying a burden for her when she was straying from God for a period of time in her life. And so she kind of took up that torch, and I knew that she was praying for me, and she was praying for Wayne and Dad and her family, and also for others that she loved. Another thing that Mom did was she demonstrated service. She was always serving. She was serving in her church. She served in several missionary organizations. She was a church treasurer for pretty much the whole time I ever knew. She was handling the finances. She was very good with money and finances. And so she would take care of those books and those things. She always was involved in children's church. She was my Sunday school teacher for quite a bit of my life. She did junior church. She did vacation Bible schools in the summer. She even, I believe, went to Brown Hill Church in Pennsylvania and did a VBS there. Remember that quite well. She made, I remember as a kid, her laminating visualized songs that she would make for kids to sing. And so she invested in that heavily. We would host church events sometimes at our house, and people from our church family would come over. I remember one year there was an older lady that Mom would help her get ready in the morning. It was a job that she did, and this lady didn't have any family, so we had her over for a Christmas dinner at our house. And I remember that happening. That happened in Salem. So Mom demonstrated service. She volunteered at the Christian day school that Wayne and I attended, and she did that right up until she got sick. And I remember standing there in the hallway with my arm around her when I was actually taller than she was at 14. Another thing that I remember, Mom loved to travel. She loved to drive, and we would go up to Pennsylvania. Dad would go sometimes whenever we had time off, but sometimes Mom would just take me when it was just me. Maybe I remember a lady named Kathy Haight lived up there in Pennsylvania, and she would go with Mom from Salem, and they would drive together. I remember a memorable trip with my Aunt Gladys when we drove to Pennsylvania, and there were tornadoes everywhere, and that's another story for another day. But I remember that trip, and I remember us traveling together to New York to visit there for either Christmas or Thanksgiving. Mom and Dad would alternate Christmas and Thanksgiving. They would one year would go to Pennsylvania for one holiday and New York for the other, and back and forth. And so I remember those times with great excitement. Again, Mom and Dad lived on a shoestring. We didn't eat out much. But I remember getting ready to go to New York one cold morning in our old, I think it was a Chevy Vega. It was a beast of an old car, but it got the miles. It took care of, it went the miles. But anyway, remember us stopping at, used to be a Mr. Donut, I think, and getting some coffee and donuts. Of course, Mom loved her black coffee. Mom and Dad both did, and they could consume thermoses of it at a time. And so I remember them stopping as a treat and getting some donuts and coffee, and says we would head up there. And if I have my details wrong, Wayne or Dad, you'll have to forgive me. But anyway, I remember us just enjoying that. And in the later years of Mom's life, we had an old Ford Courier pickup, and this thing was I actually drove it myself when I started driving, and it was great in the snow. But we had a cap on it, and so Mom and Dad would sit up front, and Wayne and I would bundle up in sleeping bags and mattresses in the back, and we had a great time. We'd listen to cassette tapes as we drove, and we had a little screwdriver that we poked through between the bed and the cab. There was like a gap between the bed and the cab, And so we would bang on that screwdriver, and Mom would open the inside window, and we would open the window between the cap, and we would converse about something. And but then they would just go on talking. Mom and Dad would be chatting the whole way to New York, and we would be in the back, Wayne and I, having a great time. And those are great memories. But they loved to visit. And going to New York, I remember Mom sitting in the rocking chair and sipping black coffee, chatting with Grandpa and Grandma. And those were highlights. Those were great times. And visiting with all my aunts and uncles from New York. She loved that. She loved it very much. And she really enjoyed those times. And then we would go to Pennsylvania to Grandma's house, and I remember all the family coming in, and us. I remember one time when I think Uncle Fred was there, and there was a camper parked out in my Grandma Bennett's backyard, and I remember everyone getting together with guitars. Of course, we kids didn't have any interest in old, boring adult stuff. We'd head on down over the back side of the hill, and we would play out in the fields and do other things. But just remember Mom and Dad enjoying that, and so those were always great highlights of my memories. So I have a few other things, but I just wanted to know: is there anyone else that would want to, if I could figure out how to do it here, would want to join me real quick on camera and just chat for a minute? See if I can get it to work. Let's see here. I've been known to be called a talker, but eventually I'll run out of things to say. Wayne, where are you? I don't know if it'll let you ask to join me or not, or if I have that set up. Please do. Let's see here. Well, I haven't done this too much, so. Don't mind me. I'm just figuring things out here. Aunt Judy says she remembers the little red ornaments that Mom crocheted. Yeah, she did a lot of that sort of thing. It was, yeah. I gotta figure out how to do this. Wayne, help me. I know that there's usually a way to bring someone on, but I don't know if it's gonna let me do it or not. If someone wants to call, oh yeah. Tell you what, if someone wants to call my number, I'm gonna give it to you. And I'll just put you on speakerphone. Hey, Darlene. Good to see you. Yeah, mom did love to sing. Oh, Wayne's talking. My mom did Women's Missionary Society. She did a mail out for that, and she would spend a lot of time every month, and I would help her. I don't know if Wayne helped with that or not, but he would join in and do that. Yeah, let me see, Beth, if I can get you in here. Sorry for the dead air. Come on now. Okay, let's see if this works. It's supposed to show me who's viewing. try that. Well, they don't make it easy. Sorry. You'd think I'd be able to figure this out, right? Well, I'm going to call Wayne. All right, I'm putting you on speaker, Wayne.
Okay.
Don't get any feedback now.
I got my headset on, so it shouldn't.
All right. Do you you want to share anything about Mom there while we're doing this?
Well, that comment that I made there was okay. Sorry, let me pause this. So that mail out that she would do, she ran it off on a mimeograph at the connection office, and then she would print off each of the pages. I forget how many, but I know there were pretty thick stacks of paper, and then she would bring those home and go down and make all these little packets, and then she'd staple them all, and she'd stuff all the envelopes and get them mailed out. And that was a huge amount of work. You see copy machines that do that all in one swipe here, and watched her do that stuff just at the kitchen table and do that for the connection.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Do you have any memories from camping or things like that you would want to share?
Well, I remember it was just a great time because usually there weren't too many people that tent camped, and so a lot of times we would have those places all to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and so we could go fishing, we could go swimming, and then just enjoy the time. I think we cooked some pretty good food.
Yeah.
And just to be able to do that together and just being together, I think that's something that we all look forward to throughout the year.
Yeah.
And it's cool that I live just over the hill from one of the places that we went to.
Yeah, that's true. You do. That was Hidden Valley Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually the last place that we went camping.
It was.
Yeah. So that was a place that Mom loved, and I know that we all love. That's for sure.
When we were after we moved to Alliance, I know Mom did a lot of canning. We had a lot of produce from that acre that we lived on. So we had the fruit. We had berries that got made into jelly, and just a lot of different things that she did there. I remember Grandma Bennett even came out and helped with some of those things, and just being a little kid, watching those things be made and how that all worked. I remember just when you're a little kid, you don't have too many responsibilities, but just to see all that stuff happening, it was cool that Mom was involved in all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, anybody, any of the other family, please give me a call, and we'll get you in on here. And Wayne, I'm going to send you a link, and I'm going to see if it'll let you do anything of the things that I can't seem to do, because I'm either looking at the wrong screen or something like that. So,
Okay.
I'm sending that over. Beth, you want to call in? Darlene, we'd love to hear from you. There's not too many of us here. Whoops. All right. That was great. Let's see. I'm going to read some of your comments. Oh, there we go. All right. Hi, Aunt Judy.
Hi, Andy.
Now you're on.
Okay, I have three things I wanted to mention. So I vividly remember your family pulling in 94 North Street for Christmases, or whether it was
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving or. And your mom always had the biggest smile, and she was so happy unloading all the bags from the trunk. And I was still living home. Some of my other siblings had been married and weren't at home at the time. So, and she would always have the biggest smile, and that absolutely remember her sitting on the couch crocheting those little red Christmas ornaments, and then she'd put a couple of pieces of candy in each one. It was like a little basket.
Mm-hmm.
And I also remember your mother was a night owl.
Yeah.
Remember in Salem, sitting in the kitchen with her, and she was making some sort of ham and cheese sandwiches, and it had like a sauce on the top. Whether she was making it for a church function or what, but it was late, and we were sitting chatting, and it was really fun. She was always just a fun person to be around.
Well,
And
that's great.
I also remember she liked to walk in her bare feet outside. Did
Yes,
did she do that all summer long? Always out in the garden in her bare feet?
she did. She did. She did a lot of that, and I used to. I got it. You know, I would do the same thing too. I would run up and down the alley to the where I could run through the stones, and it didn't even hurt my feet. But that was something I learned from her. But yeah, she did that.
Oh, oh. So those are a few of the memories I wanted to mention. So I will hang up so someone else has a chance now.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
thank you,
that's,
Aunt Judy. I love you.
I love you too, and this is a wonderful tribute. I'm enjoying it so much.
Okay. Thanks so much for calling in.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye. Oh, that's great. That's great. Aunt Joan, Mom used to love to come up and come to the Christmas Eve events at your house. Yeah, we had a great time. And let's see, I'm reading some of your comments here. I see Kate on here. That's great. And Aunt Mel. Good. Well, give me a call. I'd love to chat with you. Awesome. Um, you know, just a couple other things. I don't know if I'm able to share my screen here, but earlier it said I could, but it's being cantankerous here. I'm going to try something else. No, doesn't want to do it. Sorry. Technology. It's a wonderful thing. All right. Okay, well, I will I wanted to share a well, feel free to call in. I'm going to share one more thing here and then we'll talk some more. Wanted to share some pictures, and I'm just trying to see if it'll let me share my screen so you can see it. No, I seem to have either not set it up properly at the beginning or something along that line, but I'm not going to worry about it. Not going to stress. So anyway, I want to read I'll post the pictures to the event after we were done. Oh, hey, Mindy. Hi, Mindy. My cousin Mindy. Yes. And yes, we got snowed in Pennsylvania. And that was, as a kid, that was always a great time when we could get snowed in Pennsylvania because we could sled ride down the hill back behind. I remember us digging snow tunnels out in the back of Grandma Bennett's backyard, and we just had a great time doing that sort of thing. And so yeah, that was fortuitous when that happened. Oh dear. Let's see here. Aunt Joan mentioned Mom's giggle. I remember this. Now, you Bennett family, you're being quiet, but I remember Mom sitting around at Grandma's house with a room full of Bennetts, and I mean the gales of laughter that would come out of that room, and they would go on and on and on. She was having such a great time, and so she would just howl with laughter, and all of you aunts would just have a great time. She loved that so much. And another funny memory that I have of us going there to Grandma's is Mom and Dad both wanted to. I imagine Grandma was on a fixed income, and so she didn't have a lot of money, and Mom and Dad wanted to be a blessing to her, but she wouldn't take it. So Mom and Dad cooked up the idea of hiding some money, and so I remember Dad taping a $20 bill. I think in the back of Grandma's microwave once. He put it in the fridge. He put it somewhere in the kitchen, of course, because she spent a lot of time out there. But he would hide it various places, and she would get a kick out of it. She would get a kick out of it because she would tell him, "Now don't you do that again." But she knew she would kind of grin because she knew he was going to do it again. And so, but I remember doing that at Grandma Bennett's house, and I remember. I just remember how much Mom loved Grandma Bennett, and I remember Grandma Bennett, I'm sure how difficult it was for her to be at her own, her child's funeral. I know that I've seen several people that have had to go through that, and that was a difficult time for her. But man, we're just so blessed when you look at all the loving people. Of course, Grandma and Grandpa Gangi are both passed away now and gone on, but just a legacy of love and family that we all have. Those of us that are in the family, and it really is a blessing. It really is a blessing. So, it's of course some of these things are sad to recount, but yeah, Mindy, the laughter. I remember being as cousins, just kind of rolling our eyes, like, what in the world is going on in there? And they were having a great time. Those are great memories. They really are. Really great. Oh, here's Aunt Mel. I don't know if you can see these or not, but I remember Mom driving past our place on the way to Grandma's. Yes, we had the old red station wagon, and and the horn didn't work. That's a great memory. And so we yelled down we rolled down the windows and yelled. Oh, I remember that. You guys lived right there. For those of you that remember Brown Hill, they lived for a while right before the church, and we would cross over. I think that was like hard top, and then it would go to gravel there as we changed townships. And I remember doing that. Oh, and I only know this from people telling me, but Mom was very proud of her Volkswagen Beetle. I think one of her favorite memories, she would recount it with great laughter, was she loved, remember her, I think she passed Fred McKinney stuck in his pickup truck on Brown Hill, and she passed him and waved at him and went around him in her Volkswagen and went up the hill, and she would tell that with great hilarity, the story of her getting through the snow in her Volkswagen Beetle. And so I remember those stories that she told. And so she had she had a lot of stories to share. One thing I would like to know more about is she had told me various stories about kind of a time of being a little rebellious, and then making some choices, and kind of getting her life back on track. And she told me some of those stories, and but remember her telling me about my grandma praying for her, and those were really cool memories. So I remember Mom telling me a story about when she was interested in Dad, him driving by on the road, and she would wait to see him coming, and but they knew that it was Dad because he drove slow on the gravel. And I will tell you that nothing has changed to this day. Dad is still very careful. In fact, our road was really rough, and I'm sure if he's watching or will watch this later, he still drives very carefully, and he saves his vehicles, and he's intentional about it. But I remember them saying, "Here comes Dad," and then when he hit that gravel part, he would slow down. And I think Fred McKinney, remember seeing him somewhere and saying, "Tom, why you drive so slow?" And Mom would always grin about that and say that's how they knew that it was Dad coming up Brown Hill Road, because he would slow down. So I don't know. I just have a few little memories like that that Mom shared with me. So those are fun. Those are fun. Any other memories anybody wants to share? Camping. I remember sometimes when we would go, and of course the weather wouldn't always cooperate. And I remember, I remember it being miserable and raining one time, and we were sitting underneath the canopy for most of the day. And I remember Mom just making little comments like, "Well, at least we're together, and at least we're under here, and we're dry," and kind of trying to cheer us up, But I remember that. That was great. Oh, Mandy, that is a great story. I didn't ever I remember when you guys came, but I didn't know that you were there. I remember talking to Uncle Dale and Aunt Mel. Oh my, that is so neat. That is such a great memory. Thanks for sharing that. Oh man, that's wonderful. I remember Darlene. You and Tom. You guys had a special place in her heart, and she always would chat about you guys. And I remember whenever she got to see you and Tom, and I remember one of the pictures I wanted to show you guys was of Mom and Dad. Of course, Mom was just a few hours, I forget how many hours, older than Dad, and she would remind him of that from time to time. But anyway, their birthdays were on the same day. Well, the 24th was Mom's birthday, and the 25th was Dad's. And I believe Tom Bennett's birthday was the 24th, same as Mom. Am I getting this right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, there was a birthday celebration for Mom and Dad's 40th, and Tom was 20. So they made a cake that said Tom, Wilma, Tom, and it had 40, 40, 20. Or however it was laid out. Maybe, and so it had all and they shared their birthday together. And so there's a neat picture of that. And then someone had a newspaper made up that said Tom and Wilma turned 40 and demand a recount. Little did we know that she would only be with us for another year or so. But yeah, those were some amazing memories. And it's very hard to believe that she passed away at 41. And as I'm now 44, it's hard to get your mind around the fact that I'm older than she was when she passed away. So yeah, that is an amazing memory of that. Well, it's been a little over an hour, and I have nowhere to be. I wanted to be here and share, but I wanted to share something with y'all in a way of encouragement. A few months ago, oh yeah, Wayne, exactly. We don't have that many pictures, and the sound of her voice, we don't have much of that. And so that would be that getting a hold of things like that would be a blessing. That would definitely be good. And even if, like I said, I'm going to share a link where you can upload pictures. So even if you have them and you can snap them on your phone and upload them, that would be great. Because like I've said before, Mom was a camera avoider. My dad brought me a copy of the Asheville 1980 yearbook. Shout out there, Aunt Mel. She was the featured senior of that year. But anyway, there's Mom, the yearbook editor. And so she had her picture on that page. But I have a feeling that one of the reasons she was happy to be the yearbook editor is not only because she'd type and arrange and do all those things, but then she could make sure that none of the snapshots of her got into the yearbook. I can guarantee you that's what she was doing. Because Mom was all about getting away from the camera. In fact, we have a home video of me on a sled. And so Dad is taking video of me, and then he kind of moves to me and Mom, and she's like points back to me, like, get the camera back on him. So anyway, she was always avoiding the camera, and the problem is we don't have many pictures of her. So if you have any, we'd love to get those. But yeah, she was always about, focusing on other people too. But, that's another thing. Mom loved to take pictures, and she always had She had a 35 millimeter, and then she had a 110 little camera, and she always was taking pictures, and it was a blessing. So I want to share something with you here. A few months ago, I saw something, and first of all, I want to read you a quote from a literary hero of mine by the name of C.S. Lewis. And I saw this quote the other day, and he was discussing how we regard this life as being, what we're in, what we can taste, what we can see, what we can smell. And he just says, think of yourself just as a seed patiently wintering in the earth, waiting to come up a flower in the gardener's good time, up in the real world, the real waking. So in one sense, Mom's parted from us, but we think of us as being alive and her being passed away. But the reality is we're a seed patiently wintering in the earth, waiting to come up, a flower in the gardener's good time, up into the real world, the real waking. She's the one who's awake today, and I can't wait to see her someday. There's a scripture passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and I heard this a while back on a song, and I'll share the song on this on my page later on here tonight. But it's from the Message. It's a version of the scripture, and that is it's not a word for word. It's something that just brings another perspective on the text. And I would encourage you to read it in the version you're comfortable with, and also this in the Message. But 1 Corinthians 15:34 through 15 verse 35 through verse 44. And Paul, the author, says, some skeptic is sure to ask, show me how resurrection works. Give me a diagram. Draw me a picture. What does this resurrection body look like? If you look at this question closely, you will realize how absurd it is. There are no diagrams for this kind of thing. We do have a parallel existing in gardening. And remember, Mom loved gardening. You plant a dead seed, and soon there is a flourishing plant. There is no visual likeness between the seed and the plant. You could never guess what a tomato would look like by looking at a tomato seed. What we plant in the soil and what grows out of it don't look anything alike. The dead body that we bury in the ground and the resurrection body that comes from it will be dramatically different. You will notice that the variety of bodies is stunning. Just as there are different kinds of seeds, there are different kinds of bodies. Humans, animals, birds, fish, each unprecedented in its form. You get a hint at the diversity of resurrection glory by looking at the diversity of the bodies, not only on the earth, but in the skies, the sun, the moon, the stars. All of these varieties of beauty and brightness. And we're only looking at pre-resurrection seeds. Who can imagine what the resurrection plants will be like? This image of planting a dead seed and raising a live plant is a mere sketch at best, but perhaps it will help in approaching the mystery of the resurrection body. But only if you keep in mind that when we're raised for good, alive forever. The corpse that is planted is no beauty, but when it's raised, it's glorious. Put in the ground, weak, it comes up powerful. The seed sown is natural. The seed grown is supernatural. Same seed, same body, but what a difference from when it goes down in physical mortality to when it is raised up in spiritual immortality. And from the same passage, or from the same chapter, and later on, I want to read this from Mom's Wedding Bible. Have it right here with me. Just to let you kind of look at it here. This is the Bible that Mom carried at her wedding, March of 1977. I'm going to read verses 51 through 58. This is from the King James Version. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So, when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Now, this Bible, as I said, was Mom's wedding Bible, and she treasured it. She didn't make many marks in it, but this next verse has a mark beside it. One of the only ones I could find in the Bible that Mom made. Verse 57. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And here is the takeaway from this passage. Therefore, my beloved brethren, that's us, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And Mom marked that in here as something that was meaningful to her. So I just wanted to share that encouragement with you tonight. And obviously, loss and death and grief, we've experienced it. And as time goes on, we experience more of it. I know in the past couple years, our Gangi family has experienced loss of Grandpa, then Grandma, of Uncle Dan, and it's very difficult to go through these times. I know that we've all been touched by it, and so it's important to remember what's important. You know, Mom left me and Wayne, Dad, all of us, our family is a great example of someone who put God first, and I'm so grateful for that. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad today that I have a hope of seeing her again. And but I treasure those memories. I treasure the memories, and so I'm grateful today. And yes, it's sad, and yes, there's grief, and yeah, there's things that I don't understand the whys behind it. But I'm glad today for how blessed I am, and it's incredible. In 14 years of my life, and just 8 years of Wayne's life, what an incredible impact that Mom had on me. And she's impacted all of us, all of you that are watching tonight. She's impacted all of us, and I'm very grateful for that tonight. So I love you all, and I'm fine to go on chatting. You don't have to stay if you can't stay, but if any of you other ones of you would like to give me a call or make a comment, I'm good with it. And I've really enjoyed this, and I just pray that that I can carry on Mom's legacy and be a blessing. It's great now that Wayne has a beautiful little girl and a wonderful wife, and we just got together last night, went Christmas caroling, and so we're enjoying Christmas season. And tomorrow, Larissa and I are planning to drive up to Pennsylvania for a quick visit. Unfortunately, Drew is neck deep in the ending of his semester for his senior year of school. So he and Connie are going to be here slogging through wet cement while Larissa and I go out and do some shopping, but and do some visiting. But we're looking forward to that. But Aunt Joan, it's been great to have you on here tonight, and I just love all of you, and I'm just so glad that we could share some time together. And it's so neat. Everyone who remembers Mom, there are a shrinking set of people in my life that remember Mom, and I'm always glad to have that conversation. And so many people will come up and talk to me. Just today, one of the ladies that Mom babysat for commented and just told me what a wonderful woman Mom was, and it was just great to see that. And I'll tell you a quick story. There's a gentleman that lives about 2 miles from where I live now, and he has a construction company. But years ago, he told me, just a couple years ago I ran into him, and he said, I remember your mom. He said, one day, he said, I was driving into Salem, and I came across this car that was broke down on the side of the road. And he said there were these two girls in there, and he said first he didn't know who they were. And then he found out it was Mom, and he did kind of know us through connections over at the Bible college that Dad went to. But he said they were there, and they were broke down, and they were trying to figure out what to do, and they were going to change the tire. Of course, Mom knew how to Mom knew how to change a tire, and she knew how to do various things. I remember her proudly telling me about her time at the Volkswagen dealership and things like that. And but anyway, he was happy to change their tire for them, and he just recounted that event to me, and it was really neat, just unexpected. I haven't talked to this guy maybe twice in my entire life, and he once he knew who I was, that was the first memory that popped into his mind. I don't know if it was him and Aunt Gladys, if it was Mom and Aunt Gladys that were there, or if it was someone else from Salem area, but anyway, it was a cool memory. Another thing I'll mention is when Aunt Gladys was out in her sister was out in Colorado. Mom and I jumped on a Greyhound bus. Dad took us, I think, to Youngstown in the middle of the night. We got on a Greyhound bus and went all the way to Colorado, and it was an adventure. And I remember, I remember driving, looking out the windows on the Greyhound bus, and I had a little book I was reading, Pilgrim's Progress, and she read to me, and I was doing some. I don't think I was old enough to read yet, but I was looking at the pictures anyway. But we just spent hours together talking, and I remember going out there and spending time, and I believe that Ron and Rhea Thornton drove out and brought us back. But anyway, it was a memorable trip, and we just had a great time. I remember going through the plains of Kansas or somewhere in the bus, and there were some horses that were black and white spotted. I remember saying, "Mom, look, there's Holstein horses." And I remember her howling with laughter, and I was kind of confused. But it struck her funny, and she thought that was great that I said those were Holstein horses. So little memories like that are neat. Another one, Mom was a disciplinarian, and Wayne and I both can testify she could give us that look when we were getting out of hand. That was all it took. I have a feeling that you couldn't push her around. If she said it was this way, it was that way. If she said to do this, we just did it. I forgot a lot, but when I didn't intend to do things wrong. But I remember we were going through the A&P, which is now Sparkle Market in Salem, and there was this kid. We were in the cereal aisle, and he was throwing a fit on the floor because he couldn't have a certain kind of cereal that he wanted. And I remember Mom looking at me, and we rolled past this kid, and we got around the end of the end cap, and she leaned down to me and she said, "So what do you think would happen to you if you did that?" And I said, "Oh, I think I'd probably get a spanking." And she said, "You're right." So she was encouraging me not to be like that, but it was kind of humorous because she had a little wry grin on the corner of her mouth as she said it. And so I just got countless little memories like that that I have and I treasure. And so I was truly blessed to know Wilma Jean, as her family called her, and but she was Mom to me, and we truly are blessed. Hey, Bridget, good to see you tonight, and thank you everyone for your comments. It's so wonderful to be able to remember these things. Oh yes, Aunt Rhea. Mindy mentioned our Aunt Rhea. I think that's in the Bennett genes to be able to laugh a lot, and the trip from Colorado. I remember us driving through St. Louis. I remember seeing the St. Louis Arch. And I remember we drove past a ball game, and of course Uncle Ron got on the radio and found the ball game, and so it was kind of neat. We were driving past and saw what was going on there, and I remember that. But oh yeah, it was nonstop laughter. I think they drove out in a Volkswagen Rabbit, if I remember correctly. But that was I think Connie, did your family have a Rabbit? Did you go to Colorado in your Rabbit? Oh, you didn't take. Oh, it was too old and decrepit to make that trip.
No, my dad used it for work.
Okay.
It's like 60 miles to the gallon of diesel.
Yeah, I think theirs was a diesel too, but they drove out to Colorado to pick us up. So that was a great memory. Oh man, there's so many good memories. I remember the camp out when all the Bennett family came into Salem or to Alliance, and we camped out. That was a great memory. We had a campfire and tents everywhere, and it was a great memory. Great memory. All right. Anyone else want to call in? No obligation to stay, but I'd love to talk to you. Yeah. Memories. A lot of memories. You know, when we moved to Alliance, we rented an apartment there in 1989. We sold our house in Salem, and we had an apartment in Alliance. And I remember the New Year's, ringing in the New Year, and Dad stayed up with us that year. I remember that, and I was 10 years old at the time, and it was 1990. And I remember having the discussion, with Mom, saying, "Wow, I've been alive a decade. I wonder I'll be 20 years old the next time a decade rolls over." And little did I know that Mom wouldn't live that long. But I remember that New Year's Eve, and we had a little celebration, and we had a great time, and it was really a blessing. And then, of course, when we moved to our place outside of Alliance there, that the place, and thankfully that place has been, someone else has moved in there, taking good care of it, and it's nice to drive past there. Our home in Salem was demolished, I believe it was last year, 2 years ago, but I was able to get in there, and I was able to dig up some of the flowers that were left over from Mom's planting. She had a rose of Sharon bushes, and she had some peony bushes, and I was able to get some starts off of that, and they're growing quite well here at our house now. And Wayne actually just took some of the rose of Sharon bushes that came from our house that are now here, and now he's transplanted them to his home. So we kind of can look at those and think about Mom, because she loved to tend things, and her green thumb was quite active. So that was a good memory. Well, anyone else want to give me a call? I'd love to bring you on. Hopefully everyone has been able to hear everything okay. I have Drew has a little microphone that he uses for gaming that I got set up with, and on my laptop, and so we're just sitting here in the living room sharing memories. What a blessing. All right, well, I think I'll end the stream, but I'm just going to say a quick prayer. Lord, thank you tonight for this time to remember Mom. Thank you for all your blessings. Thank you for the years that we had with her. Thank you for the legacy that she left behind. And thank you for your grace. I don't know how these things work, but if you could, you just let her know tonight that we are all thinking about her and we love her, and we're looking forward to seeing her someday. Thank you again for your blessings. Thank you for all that you've done for me, for my family, and for all of us. We pray these things tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Don't be a stranger. Reach out and chat. Mindy and any of you that are there in Pennsylvania, Larissa and I plan to be up on Brown Hill and in Warren tomorrow. So just send me a text on my number I sent you earlier there, and love to try to make something work, be able to see you. Don't have a whole lot of time, but want to try to make visiting a priority. So, all right. Love you all, and have a great night. I'm going to end the stream. God bless you all.